Hey, this is Venger Satanis. How's it going? Today I'm going to review a couple GM books. Books on game mastering, tips, techniques, each book focuses on a different certain something related to game mastering. The first one is Never Unprepared. This is a pretty slim volume, but good. Out of between 1 and 5 star rating, I would probably give it 4 stars. It does some things really, really well. Some things, there's some things I didn't like about it. And a couple things were just mediocre or puzzling or like, huh? So anyway, let me get into it. The pros. There are a lot of great anecdotes in here. Things from his own sessions, his own history as a game master, which are always great to read in whatever product. I mean, it's interesting to hear what happened to someone else's gaming experience. You don't want to hear 3 hours, waiting in line at a convention somewhere about someone's character and what they did, every second of this campaign. But little brief like, oh yeah, this happened, and I was, running this vampire game, or I was playing this Call of Cthulhu game, or, one time when we were doing this D&D one-off. That kind of stuff is definitely entertaining and interesting. Not all the time, but if done right, and this does it right. So I like that. I like the artwork. It's got a lot of great pictures. I'm not sure why there's the artist's name like right below every single piece of art. I think all but 2 or 3 of the pictures or the illustrations are done by the same artist, and then 2 or 3 are done by someone else. But every single piece of art has that little name, artist, and then colon, and then the name. And that, I don't know, that bothered me just a little bit for some reason. That's probably a nitpicky thing, but whatever. Using things like tags, sometimes you just don't want to write a ton, and you just want a little something to jog your memory. It's like with the internet. If you're posting something and you want a tag on it that just lets you and I guess anyone else reading your notes know that this is about this right here. And tags, I think, can also be helpful because they can just, they give you a little something, and then it forces you to sort of work with that. Like you could put a tag like pineapple seeds, or something like that, and you're like, well, if pineapple seeds are in a room of this dungeon, what does that mean? And then your mind might wander, or you might be forced to come up with something creative, or you could just, I don't know, just be like, oh, okay, well, you enter this room and then there's some pineapple seeds and an Umber Hulk or something like that. But tags, I think, are very useful. Obviously, the pineapple seeds, I came up with that on my own. Thank you. That's kind of a crappy example. But, I don't know, like bearded devils, and then you put like a dash, and then hates magic, or hate magic. Then that gives you a little something more. Then you're like, oh, okay, well, why do these bearded devils hate magic? And, does that mean they don't have any magic items? Or does that mean they attack anyone that uses magic? Have they created some sort of invulnerability to magic? Your mind just kind of like goes off from there. So I think little notes and tags, things like that, are wonderful. And they talk about them in the book, so kudos to that. It has a good breakdown of the creative process, like the steps that go into, that start from like, oh, you come up with an idea, to, the documentation and putting it down on paper and it manifesting into the game somehow. So there are actually several steps, and they go through them. A lot of that stuff seems like no-brainer, like, brainstorming. That's like, duh. Of course, you gotta, think of general ideas and come up with things and let the process coalesce, the whole thing. So yeah, some things seem really obvious, like brainstorming. But it's nice to have it talked about and refresh you, or just to see the steps and have them written out. Because, I don't know, maybe one day you're like, oh, do I really need to brainstorm, or can I just do something else? You know, this kind of reinforces the idea that, yeah, you should brainstorm, and then you should select different ideas from that, and, you know, take the best ones, and go through the rest of the process. What else? Know thyself, which is a very important maxim. You should know your strengths and weaknesses as a game master, and knowing those will help you. You know, the book says to provide more notes and more documentation on the things you're weakest at. You know, I don't think anyone would argue with that. I think that's a good rule of thumb, because if you're not good at coming up with descriptions of combat or something like that, then having some notes and a table of, you know, a list of things that you can roll might be a good idea. So there's stuff like that. Okay, the cons, the things I didn't like about the book. At the end of every chapter, there's like a self-test. Like, oh, do you think you're good at knowing what your weaknesses are? Like 1 through 5 or something. And like, compare that with, do you think you're good at knowing your strengths? And then you add them or subtract them together or whatever, and you come up with a number, and that's supposed to tell you kind of where you're at and maybe what you need improvement on or whatever. To me, that just seems like a waste of space. And it's already a short book. I didn't need, you know, one of those little self-test quizzes or whatever at the end of each chapter. That just strikes me as something that you read in Cosmopolitan magazine, or your girlfriend or wife's Cosmopolitan magazine, whatever. Just seemed unnecessary and superfluous and a waste of space. Also, there's a theory in here on you have different levels of creativity at different times of the day. It talks about circadian rhythm and, I don't know, other mumbo-jumbo stuff. I just didn't see that as particularly helpful or correct. It just seemed like kind of a grasp at straws. I mean, I think it could be a different level of creativity at different parts of the day. You know, it just doesn't matter on the day. You know, it's, you know, I'd rather have seen other solutions or techniques, like, I don't know, looking at imagery, like looking at pictures online, just going to Google and typing like fantasy art, and then look at images, and then just see all that and let that wash over you, and maybe something sparks your imagination or something like that. I mean, that right there I think is 3 times more helpful than like, oh, figure out if you're more or less creative between 9 and 10 a.m. And then if you are, then focus on, you know, writing things down at that point. I don't know. To me, it just seemed like, yeah. Okay, so yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. I liked it. I thought it was good. Not great. Not the end of the discussion. You know, this isn't the be-all, end-all of all books on session prep, but definitely good. You know, it's solid. 4 out of 5 stars. 1995, gnomestew.com, Engine Publishing. It's a little pricey, $20, but maybe you can find it on sale or a discount or a coupon or something somewhere. This would be an excellent value at $10, but at $20, it's a little steep. But still, overall, a good value. Okay, that's the end of part 1. Okay, the second book that I'm reviewing in this video is called Play Unsafe. This is another very slim volume that I found good, maybe even very good. I'd also give this 4 out of 5 stars. It's basically Zen and the art of role-playing. It takes the techniques of improv or the philosophy of improvisational theater and applies it to role-playing games. Game masters and players can benefit from this. Gives a bunch of different chapter headings like Be Boring. And that's a little bit misleading, I think. By boring, the author means, do or say what kind of naturally comes to you. Don't try to be outrageous or over the top or super ultra exciting. Just kind of come out with what would come naturally to you in a story. Like, you come up to a cliff and there's a bridge leading from one side to the other. And, it's a rope bridge. Looks like it's been there for a long time. And, okay, let's say the players want to cross it. And then 3,000 dragons come out of nowhere and immediately descend upon you and, shoot lightning out of their behind or something. That right there, just seems silly and ridiculous. And I guess that's my own example. But that's kind of the points that he's making. But then if you're like, okay, well, you make it on this bridge, like halfway to the other side, when you see a small band of, pygmies, or like primitive goblinoid creatures or something. They're on the other side, and they're, waving their daggers and clubs, and as if they're displeased with you trying to cross. That's not terribly over the top or flashy or super exciting or anything, but it just kind of naturally flows. And that's what the author is getting at by Be Boring. When I first read that, I'm like, okay, he wants you to be boring. How is this going to work? Or how is he going to turn this around? What's the twist? Because obviously you don't want to be too boring. And that's what it is. He's using boring in the sense that just try to take the story in a natural direction. Don't try to twist it or weave it like around your finger 5 times in order to make it, more complicated or more extravagant than it needs to be. You're just going to make it overblown and long-winded and silly. So that right there is a good technique. He has some good things to say about status, role-playing different statuses or stations, from like, high status or upper society, nobility, things like that, to, trying to role-play a beggar. That was good. It was good information. I don't know, it didn't exactly fit in with improv too much. It was good to have, but it didn't seem like an essential part of, Zen and the art of role-playing, or what this is trying to be. There probably is a sub-book out there called Zen and the art of role-playing that I don't know about, but anyway, that's the way it seemed to me. Talks about working together, building one idea off of the other. If you know anything about improv, it's about saying yes and or yes but. So let's say someone says, well, my character was raised by orcs and he hates dwarves or something like that. Then another character could say, yes, but he met a dwarf years ago that helped him out of a jam. And so even though he hates dwarves generally, specifically, there's this one individual dwarf who, he owes a debt of gratitude to. Things like that. So you build off what someone else says. And, same thing during the scenario, if you're in combat, like you say, oh, I stick him with my sword. and then the game master could say, you stick him in with your sword, but it sticks all the way in, and he moves because you wounded him, and you lose your grip on your sword, you know. And then someone else could say, but my character swoops in and grabs the handle and yanks it out and lops off his head. And the game master could go, yes, but he grows another head. Or, you know, something like that. This is a very, you know, I'm just coming up with this shit off the top of my head. So, you know, in the confines of the game, normally a lot of people working together, a lot of things seem obvious, or would seem obvious if people looked at role-playing as cooperative storytelling and improv, as opposed to competition between the players or competition between the game master and the players. You know, if you saw it more as improv and less as miniature wargaming, then, you know, you'd probably have a totally different role-playing experience. And, you know, this book helps you do that and teaches you, like, oh yeah, this is what you do. Now, whether this book is better than a book on improv theater itself, I don't know, because I haven't read any books on improv. But this is definitely a step in the right direction. He also has some anecdotes about different games he's been in, Vampire LARP, Call of Cthulhu, Dungeons and Dragons, and a few games which this one blogger would call emo forge crap. That guy knows who he is. So, yeah, I don't know if this is for you or not. I liked it. Again, I'd rather see it priced a little bit lower, maybe $8 or $10, because it's only about 65 pages of real text. You know, then you get into like the afterword and glossary and, you know, thanks pages. And, you know, there's not many words on the page, and it's pretty big font and kind of a little book. So this is definitely a primer. I wouldn't want to pay any more than, like, I don't know, I think $15 to $20 is a little steep. I would rather see it as like $8 or $10, to be honest with you. But I thought it was good. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. That's it. I pretty much rambled on about these books as much as I probably should. So with that, yeah, Cthulhu for talking.